It looks like we're live from the Digital Pedagogy Lab Institute in Virginia, Fredericksburg, with our special on-site guests. We have Jesse Stommel, we have Sean Michael Morris, we have Rebecca Hogue, and we have Brittany Brown O'Donnell. I think I got all of that right. Excellent. So why don't we introduce our on-site folks? I know you're really tired. It's been a long day. On day, I can't remember which day it is, third day of the event?
Third day.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, why don't you introduce yourselves and let us know how today went?
We are never too tired for virtually connecting.
Well, can we do a quick round of who's online there?
Oh, we want to do it that way first. Okay, let's do it that way first. I'll start left to right, Akeisha, and then Bonnie, and I'll write the rest in the chat.
Hello, my name is Akeisha Horton, and I'm a virtual architect for Air University's E-School of Graduate Professional Military Education.
And I am Bonnie Stahoviak, and I'm the host of the Teaching in Higher Ed podcast, and also the Director of Teaching Excellence and Digital Pedagogy for a small private institution out in Southern California.
Nice.
Also never too tired for virtually connecting.
And I'm Christina Hendricks. I teach philosophy at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC. And I saw, well, some of you last week, and some of you I'm seeing virtually. Hello.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Julie, and then Keegan.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Jeff Gevald. I'm director of the Young Writers Project in Vermont, and we operate a civil, respectful space for about 3,000 kids. And I also teach a master's class for teachers on how to deepen engagement of kids online.
My turn. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Lindsay. I'm based on the east coast of Australia, and I do a few things. Let's see. I teach into the master's degree in knowledge network and digital innovation at Charles Sturt University. I also work at the university as the quality learning and teaching leader for online learning in the Faculty of Arts and Ed. I'm also doing my PhD on online global collaborative educators and pedagogical change, and that's probably enough for now. But it's great to be here, and I'm the newbie.
Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keegan. I'm from the University of Oklahoma. I'm an educational technologist and get to work with folks on their fun projects and their fun courses and do some PD and different things like that. So.
And Stephen.
Hi, everyone. I'm continuing to hang out with the crowd since the one in Vancouver a couple weekends ago. And I work at Douglas College as an online learning designer. Great to see you all.
Thank you, especially Julie. This is her first time joining us, and I think Jeffrey was in a session the other day that I wasn't on. I'm Ken Bauer, professor here of computing science at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Guadalajara, and your virtual buddy for today.
Cool.
Cool. No.
So it's our turn.
Now what? Now what?
Now I will start, and I'm Jesse Stommel, and I am the co-director and co-founder of Digital Pedagogy Lab and Hybrid Pedagogy. And I'm also the executive director of the Division of Teaching and Learning Technologies at University of Mary Washington, where this Digital Pedagogy Lab is being held. My office is literally like right up above us. And I am here with my good pal and collaborator, Sean.
Hi, everybody. Sean Michael Morris. I'm the director of Digital Pedagogy Lab and also an instructional designer for the Office of Digital Learning at Middlebury College in Vermont.
And I'm Rebecca Hogue. I'm a co-director of Virtually Connecting. I'm attending. Now I just lost where I'm attending. DPLI. And I'm taking the networks track today, and I am a PhD student at the University of Ottawa, a adjunct professor at University of Massachusetts, Boston, and I live in California.
Wow.
So
I'm Brittany Brown O'Donnell, and I'm attending the design track today, or this week. It's not just today. And I'm an instructional designer. I just graduated from Virginia Tech.
And she's also a fellow.
And
She's
I'm
a Digital Pedagogy
yeah.
Lab fellow.
It's
right.
late. I'm forgetting.
That's fine.
That means she's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brittany is amazing. Excellent. So why don't you let us know what was going on in the track? So I don't know what you want to talk about, Sean or Jesse or Rebecca and Brittany.
So today, I mean, interestingly for me, today, the third day of a 5-day institute, one of the things that I often talk about a couple things I've said, a couple metaphors. One is that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you got to pace yourself. And I also talk about it as a movie that has a plot, and that the plot has arcs. And we are in one of the arcs of the plot. But I would say, honestly, third day for me is the day when your brain feels like it's melting and you're not sure that you're going to survive. And then you just like break open and you look around and you think, wow, I love these people and I love spending time with these people. So that's what I've been up to. It's been much more of a day about just collaborating and seeing people and enjoying working with people than it has been about what we got accomplished today. Feels like first 2 days were about what we got accomplished. Today was about just being in space with other people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that our experience has been so far with the 5-day workshops is that Wednesday is sort of the day when everyone's really exhausted. Thursday is the day when everyone's like, wait, this is about to end. And no one wants to go home at that point. And it's fascinating because I think, the first day there's this exhilaration about, oh, I'm in this community of people and I didn't realize all these people were out there and it's really wonderful to be with everybody. And then you get to work. And by the time Thursday comes around and certainly Friday morning, you're again aware of all these people that you're with in a really much deeper sense in terms of having collaborated and worked together and really tossed some ideas back and forth and made some progress. And then it's time to go home.
One of the things I was talking to Trisha Matthew about today, who is one of the fellows, one of the other fellows, I was talking to her about how you feel like when you work with someone online and you know someone online and you follow their work, you feel like you know them. Even though you really don't, you just feel like you do. And then when you see them for the first time, you feel immediately comfortable with them. I know that, like, Bonnie's on the screen right now. I know that's how I'm going to feel about her the first time I see her in person. And then what happens is you realize how much and how different you can come to know them across working very closely in physical proximity over 5 days. It's such a short space of time, and yet it feels like you get to know them so well and so differently.
I think we felt that as well when I gave you that surprise hug last year.
Well, exactly. It feels exactly right and exactly like, wow, how did we get to this place while having never met each other in person? Right. But we did.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Can I just jump in there and say, this is such an ongoing discussion in terms of the experience of connecting virtually compared to the experience of on-campus learning, something that we're struggling with at Charles Sturt University in terms of the way we're developing our online learning approach. And it's almost like you have to feel that connectivism to understand it and to talk to people about it who have never really connected, are still not jumping into Twitter, are still not doing things that perhaps we're all typically doing. Talking to them, they don't feel it, and they say, well, I just want to go in and do the essays and get my degree. That's it, leave me alone. And what do you normally say to people like that, or administrators who think that's actually okay to learn in that way?
Actually, so it's interesting because working at Middlebury College, Middlebury really is working to get into the digital side of things. At the same time, you always end up with any group of faculty that I've ever worked with, you always end up with people who don't want to be dragged in, right? And I actually am not an advocate for dragging anybody in. I think that people should find their way in. And I feel like, work with people who are really interested, and then word kind of spreads. But I think also trying to give people multiple avenues of access, different ways of getting in. And if Synchronous events, synchronous live kind of streaming like this is one way. Twitter is another way. Facebook is another way. Slack, if they want a sort of closed group kind of communication tool. Any sort of little step that they can take that makes them feel comfortable, I think is the best way to sort of get people together. One of the first ways that I got into it, got sort of brought back into it with Jesse, was with Google Docs. It was the first time I'd ever written collaboratively with anybody. And we wrote collaboratively in Google Docs. And at first it was like mind altering, right? Like it was just the most bizarre experience I'd ever had. But it really turned me on to what can happen in digital that can't happen outside of the digital.
Yeah. The one thing I would just add to what Sean said is that, and it's something that has been something that's been talked about quite a bit at this particular event, is that building a community means lots of points of entry, and I think it also means lots of points of exit as well. And that is that for momentary exit. We've talked about that with introverts. We've talked about that with how hard learning can be, and how we confront ideas that make us uncomfortable, ideas that challenge us in ways we might not be ready, in ways that make us uncomfortable. Even my keynote in Vancouver, which was about sort of my experience as a LGBTQ educator, it's as much about how do I find space for myself that's welcoming as how do I make sure that I always know where the door is when I don't feel safe. So I think that it has to be both.
And just following on from that, like the subject one subject I'm teaching at the moment is a capstone subject for the master's degree, and I have about 30 students, and about 20 of those are very active, connected, doing things that aren't part of their assessment in terms of online learning. So one of the questions is, should we actually put assessment, online connected learning, should that actually be an accessible thing? And should it have a percentage of your marks attached to it, do you think? Or should it just be something you do anyway, and the other stuff is what you get assessed on?
So I have a trouble with assessing in that space simply because of safety. I think we never know when our students come to the room what their histories are and what their backgrounds are. We don't know who's in witness protection. We don't know who's been abused. We don't know who is not safe for whatever reason when they come to the room. And so I think it's okay to put those constraints in place if you're teaching an optional class, that students have an opportunity to opt in and opt out, as long as you tell them up front. Like, I teach a leadership class, I say right at the beginning, in this class, we're going to be creating digital presence. You need to be willing to network and be part of the digital space if you want to take this class. If you're not interested in doing that, then this isn't the right class for you. But when I teach a required course, I have to give my students outs. I have to tell them, maybe you can do that. Here, if you want to do this under your name, you can get credit for this. But if you don't want to, that's okay too. Mm-hmm. As long as they meet the learning, the things that we need them to learn. But I need them to give them both opportunities.
I think that's also an opportunity to ask those 10 or so students who aren't participating digitally, what their hesitation is, why they're not doing it, and if it has something to, if it's curricular and they're just not really into the material or something else is going on for them, then that's one signal that you can pay attention to. And if it's that, hey, I don't want to go on Twitter, or I don't want to go on whatever other sort of platform you might be using, that's another signal to pay attention to, and kind of be like, all right, well, maybe I can change that up. Maybe we need a private situation, so that, like, using Slack instead of Twitter, whatever it may be. But I think it's an opportunity, especially if it's still sort of at the experimental stage and kind of trying it out with students, to actually ask students, well, what is it that's getting in the way here?
And understanding that learning is uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it is on that uncomfort so that they can learn. Mm-hmm. But uncomfortable and unsafe are two fundamentally different things.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
When I first started introducing some doctoral students that I worked with to digital spaces, I tried to be too linear at first. Let me walk you through what things you might worry about, what things might be good for you. And I stopped doing that. And instead, what I now start with, the first exercise I have them do is I send them about 9 to 12 different people's websites, domains that they can go visit. And they're in similar fields to them. They're in education, K through 12 or higher ed, and that are maybe a couple steps ahead of what they might have thought they could do with their career. And I have them go and explore. Tell me which ones really resonate with you. How many of them seem like they might be a way you might feel like you could share? What concerns do you think they might have? And it just works so much better when I let them go explore, and then they get to bring up stuff to me, and we can like walk through it better. It completely transformed the way I introduce people to digital spaces now. It's just let them go explore, let them see what resonates, let them see what is fearful as they go and look at these different people's ways in which they're engaging online.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We had an interesting conversation today in the design track about Ashley, the other fellow, came and talked to us about colonizing or decolonizing rigor. And somebody brought up, they think grades are an important way that the relationship between teachers and students is expressed, mm-hmm. and that it needs to be a negotiation between the teacher and the student to have that human aspect. Mm-hmm. And so I think even not on digital spaces, wherever you're assessing, if you're having that conversation with your students, you're bringing in that human aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. I take a pretty extreme view on the subject of grading. I'm not a fan of grades altogether. But I will say, just more specifically, I want to address just the issue of grading participation. Whether it's in the class or online, and weirdly, in online spaces, we try and grade participation in ways that we very rarely try and grade interaction in the classroom. Usually there are participation grades, but we don't quantify individual utterances, usually. Some people do. But for me, human interaction is far too high resolution to be reduced to essentially be reduced to a number or to be quantified. I mean, we're talking high resolution. We're talking about 4K, 5K. We're talking about like 10 zillion K resolution. Every pore, every utterance, every gesture I'm doing with my hand, every sound in my voice, every breath I take. And that's how we engage with one another at that level. Reduce that to a grade, I think, is absurd. Mm-hmm. Not to mention cruel.
Very much so.
I just want to kind of jump in again here just to talk a little bit about the difference between a public digital space and a private digital space, which I think we and probably many of you operate in. So we have a public space for kids. They absolutely love us because we don't judge, nor are their peers judging them. They also have usernames like Hockey Chick 25, so nobody really knows who they are. We do, but they build a persona and an identity, and really that's part of what we're indirectly teaching the kids is what is your voice. And even in the academy portion of the site where we have, kind of formal workshops, we do no assessing. We do encouraging, and we are encouraging them to produce a piece that they are proud of. And then with the adults in our private space for our master's course, we definitely assess the degree to which they dive in and build community within the colleagues in the course. And we do it, as I think Christina pointed out in the chat, we do it with some simple analytics, but we also look at the depth of their engagement, their comments, how actively they're listening to their colleagues, and how specific their response is.
There's an awkward silence.
Yeah, I was like,
I'm waiting for other people to jump
Sorry.
in. No. I like the point about Christina about the analytics, because we're doing it just because it's easy to do. So
I think that's one of, when we talk about critical instructional design, one of the things that is sort of one of the kind of founding principles of that is really is the critical thinking aspect of it, and just always being aware of the decisions that we're making. And so often with digital tools, any kind of digital tool, really, the tool kind of makes the rules by which you have to play with it. We were having a conversation in the intro track that I'm teaching about how, is there a wrong way to use Snapchat? Is there a wrong way to use Facebook? And there is. And the first thing that tells you what the wrong way is the tool itself. So it guides you in a certain way to using the tool that way. The LMS is no exception. It wants you to use it in a certain way, which means it wants you to teach in a certain way. And the more add-ons that get put onto an LMS, the more your teaching becomes influenced by those sorts of add-ons. The critical instructional design approach is to step back from that and recognize what are the pedagogies that are baked into this tool, and how do I want to teach versus how is this thing trying to make me teach, and then making those choices. Now, you may choose to use learning analytics, but you're not just doing it because it's there and because that's what everyone does. You're doing it because, okay, I have a very specific reason for doing it. There's actually a moment where I had this conversation at one point, a couple of years ago, I think, about learning analytics, and that I was sort of dead set against them. And Bonnie pointed out, well, but I use them actually to point out red flags for students online, to know, hey, this person needs help because they've dropped out, or they've dropped off from the conversation, and this is one way for them to see that. But that to me is a different use than they're intended for necessarily. And that's using it for reconnecting with a student. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Bonnie, if I said that wrong or made the wrong point.
I just had a faculty member asking me about taking attendance using Canvas, which is the LMS that we use. And it's exactly this point that you were just making where I'm going, yeah, Canvas will take attendance for you, but not the way I want Canvas to take attendance for me. It's very structured, and you have to, if you miss one class, it's however many classes divided by that, and I don't like it, so I'm not going to use it. But there's lots of ways that Canvas supports my teaching. But you have to, like you said, you have to see what is actually going to emulate and reinforce your teaching approaches. But I think that's a great example of the learning analytics. We have to really be cautious of those. The other thing that really comes up to me with learning analytics is the criticisms that they follow us too much through our education. That if we start to just rely so much on algorithms, we're going to have, our third grade missed quiz is going to follow us, all the way through the rest of our educational experience. At what point do we get to wipe out our learning failures and decide, no, I'm not bad at math anymore. Suddenly I have a new possibility emerging,
I think the problem is that at any point that we think that the tool is going to do the work for us, we've like made a fundamental error. Right. It's true with any tool. Like a pencil's not going to write for us, a hammer's not going to hammer in a nail for us. Learning analytics aren't going to do the work for us. I'm thinking specifically of tools that institutions are adopting that are designed to flag at-risk students. They sort of monitor students' activities and monitor their progress so that they can flag at-risk students who need support, otherwise they might drop out, or otherwise they might not complete their degrees. And I think to some extent, I have nothing against the existence of those tools. What I'm troubled by is the notion that an algorithm can help us deal with at-risk students, or that an algorithm can deal with at-risk students. It's complicated, hard work. Most of it is human work. The tools can help us to some extent, but they can't even start to do the work for us.
Or cuts the humans out of the loop, Jesse. We have to take attendance here. And so I've got this list in a special system I go into, and I've had to make a mental note of how many students I have in each group. I have like 25, 20, 30 students, so it's not that hard. But they don't let me know when a student is dropped. And I want to know because I want to reach out to that student. So I have to notice, oh, there's less students today. Who's missing? And then go back and review my data to find out who's missing, because they've cut me out of the loop by just, if the student dropped, they just don't appear on my list anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone's taking notes.
I was wondering if someone could say something about what a fellow is at DPLI. I mean, I think I know, but just in case anybody watching doesn't know, maybe Brittany can say something about her role.
Put me on the spot.
The first thing a fellow has to do
Sorry.
what a fellow is.
First thing a fellow does is they don't talk about fellows.
Sorry.
So I get a sponsorship or a scholarship to be able to attend, and I'm privileged that I get to come and attend and do a workshop and kind of I was picked from among a group as an exemplary for Digital Pedagogy Lab. So fellows, we were talking about today, we're trying to find ways to collect us all together and bring us together to form a little community to learn from each other.
And I think I think one of the things that we also talked about with the fellows is that in a way, we've been doing this fellowship program for 3 years now, but we've each year invited the fellows to have lunch with us. And the goal of that lunch is to help figure out what the fellowship program is. And that's really just this institute in a nutshell. It's figuring itself out as it goes along. Just like my classroom, I don't show up and know exactly what we're going to do because I haven't met the people yet. The community hasn't formed yet. So in some ways that happens across 15 weeks. We're thinking about Digital Pedagogy Lab as a community that might form across 15 years. And thinking about how do we be patient with the community and let this event and let something like the fellowship program emerge out of conversations and not just be architectured in advance by Sean and I.
Wonderful. I haven't heard Keegan's voice. There it is.
Well, I was going to say on that note in particular, I guess I'm interested, I'm curious, and what are the ways that the Digital Pedagogy Lab has kind of lived up to your expectations, and what conversations that are being sparked have you most excited now at this point?
It's interesting, actually. When we started Digital Pedagogy Lab, in many of the same ways that we teach, we didn't have expectations. We knew that there was a widespread community of people doing digital pedagogy and who had questions about digital pedagogy. And we thought there needs to be a place where these folks gather. And so we constructed something that was a gathering place for them. We really tried to make something that was like a digital pedagogy summer camp, essentially, so that people would have cohorts and they would get together and have lots of good discussions and leave feeling better, not just about the kind of work that they could do, but also about being part of a community. And so I think the community piece of it continues to be stronger and stronger and stronger every year. I was actually, for example, at the Digital Pedagogy Lab in Vancouver just almost 2 weeks ago, really impressed in the 3 days that we had together, the kind of bonds that were formed during that event. And that to me is the real key here, is that this is about those bonds, this is about those communities. And sometimes I think that ends up being, that can end up translating into professional collaborations, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just means that you know you're not alone in this work. Because a lot of us work at institutions where digital is sort of a struggling thing and people are trying to make it work. And you face opposition to your efforts. And some people come here and they're by themselves. They came here from an institution completely by themselves. Other people come with a cohort of people from their institution. But regardless, discovering that there's all these people who are interested in this, and there's ways to stay in touch with each other and even work together, I think is really the key. So, and that definitely has, exceeded our expectations.
Can I ask how global is the Digital Pedagogy Lab, or the Virtually Connecting? I mean, how far beyond North America have you been?
I'll just say that I'm in the networks track, which is being led by Mehab Ali from Egypt and Kate Bowles from Australia.
And we're in the United States. So to some extent, and I'll let Rebecca speak for Virtually Connecting a bit. So we've had 6 institutes. 3 of them have been in the United States, 2 at University of Mary Washington, 1 at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then we have had 3 international institutes, 1 at Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada, 1 at Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, and then 1 in Cairo, Egypt. And we've been thinking about ways to expand the network even more. But then one thing that happens is that this was a community that was founded through 4 years of Sean and I's work via the DigPed hashtag, DigPed chats, the Hybrid Pedagogy Journal. It was founded completely digitally and then turned into a physical conference. So in a sense, we brought that network with us to the physical event, and virtually connecting has really helped manifest that, so that it isn't just people eavesdropping on the hashtag, but also doing that a bit more formally.
Yeah, I think that and it's actually interesting that even early on in in virtually connecting space, DPLI has actually made a big impact. It was one of our first big conferences where we were really embedded into a lot of what was going on, and it brought a lot more of this sort of, I guess, presence that allowed many. So there are many people that are here today, me included, that have attended virtually in previous years, that are now here. And so I think that there's that link too, which I think is interesting.
And then many people who aren't attending this year, who attended a previous event or attended the event in Egypt or attended the event in Vancouver, who are now with us here virtually.
Like Christina.
Yeah. One of the things, though, that we do talk about is people ask when the registration is going on, is they ask, can we register virtually as a virtual attendee? And we have to kind of back them down from that by saying, it isn't a virtual event. It is an on-ground event that has a simultaneous virtual event happening in conversation with because there are some on-ground conferences that offer a virtual option as though you can have the on-ground experience totally virtually. And that's like the classic model of taking the content from your face-to-face course and just pouring it into an online course portal, and voila, you've got online learning. It doesn't actually work that way. Instead, what it is it's a conversation. It's a brushing up against one another of the face-to-face event and the digital happening.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's something that I've been part of. That blending the virtual with the physical conference is something I've done in when I've run conferences in different parts of the world under the umbrella of Flat Classroom, and we've and I'm also involved with the Global Education Conference with colleagues over there in the States as well. So that promoting those conversations at the same time as having that on-site face-to-face event is really, I think, really important. But as you sort of don't quite get it, they think they're going to get the content, they're going to be able to zoom into every presentation and get everything. But it's really about the conversation and picking up the tweets and picking up the blog posts and then having something to say about that, I think, which is an art in itself. And it's like a lot of people feel really uncomfortable with the back channel when they're sitting in a presentation. They can't quite get it. And there's been a lot of quite a bit of animosity around back channels when we started doing them years ago. But I don't know whether it's a learning style or whether it's because you can't keep up or what. But I think it's important. Yeah.
I was looking for something for you as well. Wendy Talio is also active with us in Virtually Connecting, who's from Australia. I'll send you a link.
So on our end, Sean and I actually have to run out. It's been amazing. So glad to spend time with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Sean.
All of a sudden, and I felt like I was like destroying something wonderful.
We need to respect your time on site. We know that as the Virtually Connecting community. So I really want to thank Sean and Jesse, Rebecca and Brittany for sharing your time with us today.
Thanks.
Yes, thanks for coming, guys.
It's great to see everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great 2 more days.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then the rest of us can stay on and continue if you like. Did you want to introduce yourself, Virginia?
Sure. Hold on a second. Let me turn. I got the email a little late, so I'm busy trying to I'm filling out IRB paperwork that I need to get in to get another part of my study done. My name's Virginia. I work in New York at Mercy College in the United States. I live in Connecticut, and I just graduated from Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm also a research fellow for the OER group. No, yeah, right, OER, the Open Ed group. So I was at was it Vancouver the last time? My goodness, no, Richmond. And I was, I'm familiar with the virtual connecting because I spoke in London at the ALT conference there too. So I was happy to see this all happening. It's just it being August and I have my kids all the time. Coming to any conference or even virtual conferences is difficult. So luckily they're being quiet. So I'm sorry I've sort of come in at the last
No, that's fine, Virginia.
I'll watch the whole video later on YouTube.
Wonderful.
And I hope I can come tomorrow to the 5:15 session.
Excellent, excellent. I think I'll be there. I can't remember. It's all a blur for me as well.
Yeah.
I don't remember who's doing that session.
I'll have to check.
Not me. I can't be there.
I think it's Terry. I think I'm assistant buddy, backup buddy. Other thoughts, Julie? I know you're new joining us. I linked you to Wendy as well, who's active with us in Virtually Connecting.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah. I'm just looking at their Twitter handles and accessing their blogs and trying to make a connection here, which is great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Keisha's back. It's good to hear from you as well.
Well, thank you for having me. I have one of my colleagues here, so I've been trying to. I was introducing her to you all. Well,
that's interesting.
Conversation. Also introducing her to you all. Can you say hi, baby?
Say hi.
Hey, nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you. We had that tagline. What was it? That one of the last sessions of Bring a Friend to Virtually Connecting.
Yes.
So thank you for doing that.
I follow directions.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, this is a great conversation. I don't know if anyone wants to add some more before we're still live on the internet and still recording.
Oh, we are?
We usually we usually keep going for a while and then we shut it off when the conversation drags out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I've been uncharacteristically quiet, and you all ought to appreciate that. After you get to know me, it won't be like that. But I've enjoyed this very much, and I'm trying to propagate these ideas in the college where I work. And there's a group here called the Whole Person Learning Community of Practice that will be probably the first recipients of what I picked up in Vancouver and also sitting in on these sessions here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Stephen. Anyone else have thoughts?
I just had a quick thing because Stephen said he was also in Vancouver. Now that at Digital Pedagogy Lab in Vancouver, and now I recognize your face. So this year in Vancouver was my first Digital Pedagogy Lab ever, and I just thought they were all 3 days. So when I saw in Fredericksburg they get 5 days, I was like, wait a minute,
that's not fair.
That's not fair. But I have to say that for anybody who's watching or thinking about this, even at the 3-day was fantastic. So the cool thing about Digital Pedagogy Lab Institute, which may be true in some other similar kinds of things, is that it feels like an intensive kind of workshop. You have a track and you go to sessions on that track and you meet the same group of people for 3 or 5 days, and you just really get to know people in a different way than a normal conference, and you get to dig into things a bit more deeply, and it just is, I found it really, really useful. So yeah, so I guess just a little plug.
Yeah, I was surprised
if you can ever go in person.
Wow, that's just really intense. So it's got to be exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think if there's not too much to add, I'll close out the live session here and record it. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us. And we'll be doing more sessions at least tomorrow. And if I look it up, I think as well the next day.
I think
I'm
there's
looking
one
at the
Friday.
schedule. I think there is, yes, one on Friday as well. So you can check out the virtuallyconnecting.org website and look for more sessions from this event as well as future events. And thank everyone for joining us today.